next thing that you're going to do in the settings.py file, we are going to declare the REST framework settings. So first thing you need to create is the default authentication classes, which we are going to implement. This is just the JWT authentication that we're going to implement. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to create a folder called authentication, and then we're going to create a file called backends.py file. Go to users and then create a folder called authentication, and then create an underscore init file, and then you create an init.py file and then the backends.py file. Okay, I'm going to show you how this file looks like. So in this declaration over here, just write the way it is, and also the default permission classes, include them as the way they are, like this. Okay, so we're done with the settings. Now let us go back to our users application. Our users application, the first thing that we need to do is declare our models. So first of all, this is the way the models are. So I'm sorry guys, you're seeing this. I already implemented this. I had an issue initially. I thought I was recording, and I ended up realizing that I'm not recording. That's why you can see that I've already written the code, but I can explain what I've done. So what we need here is you need to import all of these things. You need to import all these things. You also need to create a file called managers inside the users application, and add the secret key here, declare it here. Then we declare our timestamp model. This can be used across all the applications. So this is just a generic way to just not repeat ourselves. We have the created at and updated at fields. The next thing is we use the abstract user and then inherit all the things that the timestamp generic model has, and also the properties that the abstract user has. This is how we define our user model, and then we implement our token. This is how we're going to get our token. So this implement this way. So after implementing this, the next step is we implement our backends.py file. Our backend.py file, this is how it looks like. Import the necessary imports, and then we declare our secret key there, and then we declare our JWT authentication class. This is the most important part. This is where the authentication works. So this, we can call this as some sort of middleware which happens behind the scene when making a request. I declared this class, and this authentication bearer prefix is normally if you have ever used any API and you have like a sort of API key, you probably have used this bearer. So bearer actually is just the prefix that we use. Let me just show you how it looks like. Okay, like for instance, if I'm making a request, I just go to auth, or I can just type here authorization and then type bearer and then put the key. This is the JWT key, right? So this is the prefix. Whenever we make a request, all of this thing, all of this thing will be read by this backend. Okay, so this backend is trying to decode the JWT token that comes from that request. As I'm reading from this, as I documented, the authenticate method is called on every request, regardless whether the endpoint requires authentication. Any request that you're making, this functionality will actually try to decode that token. As we scroll down here, guys, I'm going to show you where this happens. When we get that request and then we get that token, we just authenticate that token. I decode the token with a secret key that was created with it. So this is when you go back to the models.py file, we have this functionality, generate JWT token. So this functionality, what we are doing here, I'm currently checking the days from now and then trying to calculate the date when the token will expire. So I added 60 days. You can just change this if you want. And then I encoded the token with the ID and the expiration timestamp. And then I used the key. This is the key. and then the algorithm. So if you look at this function accepts payload. Payload is just anything that you want to encode, the user object or anything else. The key is the key I used to encode this JWT token, and then the algorithm which I used to create this JWT token. Okay, so let us go back to the backends. So guys, make sure that you have created this folder inside the user's application. The folder is called authentication. Make sure you have the init.py file so that you can be able to access this module in other files. So you declare, you just have this file called backends.py, and then you add all of this code. So we decode the user token that we receive, and then we see if we can get the user by after decoding that token. We can actually get the ID that was encoded, and then we can get the user. If the user exists, we will return the user and the token. And then also, if the user doesn't exist, then we raise an exception. That's it for the backends. Scroll down so that you can look at it. Then the next thing, guys, after the backends have been implemented, make sure that you have implemented the custom manager. So this is the custom manager which I implemented, and the reason that we use the custom manager is just to just if I needed to update some fields on that model, I can literally update the fields based on the custom manager that I'm using, and I'm also able to validate the fields that come in that are I'm able to validate the fields. Okay, so we have this ready. So we've talked about in the user's application, we have talked about adding the folder authentication and the backends, and then we're not going to implement these exceptions at the moment, so just leave this out. Leave this out, go to admin.py file, import the user model, and then the admin site, register the user. Then after registering the user, we can see that our models are looking good. Then at the moment, guys, don't use the renderers.py file, but you can just add it there so that we can work with that later on. And also the exceptions.py, the exception folder, you can add it and you can use it maybe later. Then the next thing that you're going to do is implement our serializers. So our serializers, this is the serializers implementation. So we implement the serializers by importing the authenticate method, which comes from the auth module, and then we're just going to import the serializers, and then we're going to import the user. That's all we need. Then we're going to implement this user serializer, which we have specified that the password is write only. Okay, and then this is how we define the class meta. So this is how we define a serializer. So the serializer must include a class meta, and we actually reference which model are we going to use and which fields are going to be shown, and then we define the read-only fields, and then we override this function. So we are going to override this function so that it meets our purpose. When you go to this model serializer, you can see that this model serializer method has methods. It has create method, it has update method. This update method is the one that we are overriding. Okay, guys, then let's go back. So the next thing we are going to implement is the login serializer. This login serializer, this is how it looks like, guys. If you have any question below the comments, you can just share, and I can help you out if you have any issues. So this is the serializer that we have implemented. The way the serializer works is the login serializer. This is the data that I want to be serialized. So when I say read only, this data will only be shown the moment I want to render them. Okay, so this is what I will not input them. These are not inputs, they will be just be rendered. Then I can do the validation here. This is what we